The lithium-ion battery in your phone, your car, your wall is one of the great machines of our age. Cheap now, about $100 to $130 per kilowatt hour, a kilowatt hour being roughly the energy to drive an electric car 5 to 6 kilometers. Reliable. Everywhere. So why make an episode about leaving it behind? Because it's pressing against a ceiling. Today's best cells top out around 250 to 300 watt-hours per kilogram. Watt-hours per kilogram just meaning how much energy you carry for each kilogram of battery. The anode, the negative electrode, is graphite, carbon that cages lithium between its layers. It's stable, but it's slow to charge, and it simply can't hold much. To go further, we need a denser anode, a safer electrolyte, and cheaper raw materials. 3 doors lead out of this room: silicon, solid state, and sodium. Let's open them. Stay with me. By the end, you'll know which battery belongs in which job. Here's the map that drives everything. 2 numbers matter: watt-hours per kilogram, energy per weight, what limits an airplane or a drone, and watt-hours per liter, energy per volume, what limits a phone or a packed car floor. Today's lithium-ion sits around 250 to 300 watt-hours per kilogram, and maybe 750 watt-hours per liter. The prizes ahead push both. Silicon-rich cells already ship at 315, even 450 watt-hours per kilogram in aviation packs. Solid-state targets 400 to 500 watt-hours per kilogram, with around 900 watt-hours per liter demonstrated by Samsung. But notice the trade-off corner, bottom left. That's sodium, lower energy but dirt cheap and abundant. No single chemistry wins every axis. The frontier moves up and to the right only when someone solves a hard physical problem. So let's go solve them, one anode at a time. First, the one promising 10 times the storage. Meet silicon, the high-capacity anode. To see why it's the prize, watch how it stores lithium differently from graphite. Graphite intercalates. Lithium slips between flat carbon sheets like cards into a deck. 6 carbons cage 1 lithium. The formula Lic-6, and the lattice barely moves, swelling about 10%. Silicon instead alloys. Lithium chemically bonds into the silicon itself, up to 3.75 lithium atoms per silicon, forming a compound called Li15Si4. That packs about 3,579 milliamp hours per gram, milliamp hours per gram being charge stored per gram of material, versus graphite's 372, roughly 10 times. And it works at a low, safe voltage, close to graphite. One catch on the numbers. You'll see 4,200 quoted online. That phase only forms above 400 degrees Celsius, so ignore it. The honest room temperature ceiling is about 3,600. 10 times the storage sounds like a solved problem. It is not. Watch what alloying does to the particle. Here's the curse hiding inside the prize. To swallow 3.75 lithium per silicon, the particle balloons about 300% in volume on charge, then collapses on discharge. Watch it breathe. 2 things break. First, pulverization. During fast charging, the surface saturates with lithium while the core stays empty, and that concentration gradient, the imbalance between full skin and hungry core, literally tears the particle apart from inside. Broken fragments lose electrical contact and go dead. Second, and the slower killer, the SEI. That's the solid electrolyte interface, a thin protective skin that forms on every anode. On graphite, it forms once and stays. On breathing silicon, it cracks open every single cycle, exposing fresh silicon, growing fresh skin, each time eating an electrolyte and locking away lithium the cell can never use again. Breathe, crack, regrow. A runaway loop that slowly starves the battery. The material even whipsaws from stiff to soft each cycle. So the whole game becomes, how do we let silicon hold 10 times the lithium without shaking itself to death? Engineers attack all 3 failures: fracture, SEI, lithium loss, and the fixes are clever. 1. Go nano. Below about 150 nanometers, a silicon particle is smaller than the crack it would need to split, so it simply stops fracturing. Nanowires and nanoparticles survive the breathing. 2. Give it room. A yolk shell puts a silicon yolk inside a hollow carbon shell, with empty space. So silicon expands inward into the void. The outer surface barely moves and the SEI forms once on a stable shell instead of tearing every cycle. 3. Today's commercial winner. Silicon-carbon composites. Nanoscale silicon dispersed in a buffering carbon matrix. Add smart binders. Elastic, self-healing polymers like PAAA or alginate that hold the network like rubber bands. And pre-lithiation, preloading extra lithium to prepay that first cycle tax. Each fix trades against another. Nano means more surface, more SEI, lower efficiency. There's no free lunch, only better compromises. So where has all this actually landed in real products? Here's the honest framing. Silicon is a dial, not a switch. Nobody ships a pure silicon anode in a mass-market car. The cycle life won't survive. Instead, you dial in a fraction. Mainstream today, roughly 5 to 10% silicon mixed into graphite, buying about 10 to 15% more energy. Turn the dial further with dedicated silicon-carbon composites, Group 14 Sila, Amprius, and you reach 20 to 50% more at the cell level. The most aggressive sharpening products are Chinese flagship phones. With silicon-carbon anodes, the maker's frame is 25 to 32% silicon, fitting 7,000 milliamp hours, where graphite gave 5,000. Drone and aviation cells push to 450, 500 watt-hours per kilogram. But remember, 10 times the anode capacity is not 10 times the range. The cathode is unchanged, and you pay overhead in carbon, void, binder. Every percent of silicon buys energy and cost cycle life. The whole industry is quietly creeping up that dial. Now to door 2, where we replace the liquid inside entirely. Door 2, solid state. In today's cell, 2 electrodes are separated by a thin porous film and bathed in a liquid electrolyte. The medium lithium ions swim through. That liquid is organic and flammable. It's the reason batteries can catch fire. A solid-state battery throws it out. It replaces both the liquid and the separator with one solid electrolyte, a material that conducts lithium ions but stays physically put, holding the electrodes apart by itself. Remove the flammable liquid and you remove a whole class of fire risk. But here's the subtlety to hold on to for the rest of this episode. A liquid wets every pore, touching the electrode everywhere. A solid only touches at points. That single fact, solid meets solid, is the source of nearly every problem ahead, and it's why real cells need to be physically squeezed together under pressure. First, though, the good news: what is this solid actually made of? There are 3 rival families, and they're very different. 3 families compete to be the solid. Watch the lithium hop through each. First, sulfides, built from lithium, phosphorus, sulfur, like the workhorse or gyrodite Li6PS5Cl. These are the speed kings, 1 to 10 millisiemens per centimeter. That's the unit of ionic conductivity, how easily lithium flows. The record sulfide hits 25, more than twice the liquid benchmark of 10. They're soft enough to press cold. The catch: touch moisture, and they release toxic hydrogen sulfide gas. Second, oxide garnets, chiefly LLZO, lithium, lanthanum, zirconium, oxygen. Hard ceramic, beautifully stable against lithium and even air, but slower, around 1 millisiemen, and brutally brittle, needing 1100 degree sintering. Third, polymers like PEO, flexible, easy to roll out in sheets, but 100 to 1,000 times slower, so they must run hot, 60 to 80 degrees. Speed, stability, manufacturability. Pick 2. And here's the myth to kill. Solids are not automatically slower than liquids. The best ones already win. So what does a fast solid unlock?